Hello everyone, it is time for this week's stream. I'm on the wrong camera instantly. Let's try that again. Hello everyone, I'm here for this week's live stream with you guys. I feel like we just did this like 3 days ago. And I'm just like, why are we doing another stream so soon? It does not even feel like it's been a week. Hey guys, so Rick was first, good job. I know everyone likes to fight for first. I wanted to talk about small businesses today because I am a small one. It's why we're in the studio today instead of in front of the tank. Normally it would be the tank's turn, but I filmed the tank for you guys, which I'll be sharing with you shortly. Let me switch glasses. It'll be better for me long term. So much better. Everyone's in focus. I wanted to tell you how my business got started because that question comes up from time to time and I rarely talk about it on the channel. So for a super long time, I was known as a professional stripper, and people always got a kick out of that because they thought there's just no way, I just don't see it. And you're not wrong, you don't see it because I worked nights, weekends, and holidays. And I did it for a super long time. And then as a side hustle, I started to sell RODI systems from my website. And I started working with acrylic for projects for myself, for my own aquarium. And I wanted I wanted a nice sump and I wanted an overflow box, but I couldn't believe what they cost. And I said, that's crazy. I mean, just for example, a plastic box that hung on the inside and hung on the outside with a tube was over $100. That was back in 98, 99. I was like, $100? I mean, now you guys, that's a frag. But back then we could get Colony for 40 bucks, but the overflow box was over 100 bucks. And I was so annoyed that I went and bought a piece of acrylic and I made my own shape and I glued it together, and the rest is history. I've been working with acrylic ever since. What ended up happening was I made my box. It wasn't perfect. It did its job. It wasn't great. Later I made a nicer one with thicker acrylic and better glue and better seams. But people would say, hey, can you make something like that for me as well? And I thought, I guess I can. Yeah, I mean, because I kept thinking it's just going to look like I made it. It's not going to look fantastic or anything like that. But people liked what I was doing. They liked the layout of the sumps that I built for myself. And they said, we want a sump like yours, which was contrary to the type that was so popular back then, which was the Berlin system. That was basically a drain into a skimmer section. There was some baffles and you were in the return zone, or there was skimmer section, refugium, return zone. And for the last 20 years, I've been telling everyone, skimmer section, refugium, return zone in the middle. That way you can have a slower rate in the refugium and a faster rate through the skimmer section, and they join in the center. It's better. It might be a little harder to plumb the first day you're hooking it up, but it's so much better long term. And you're not wasting your pods getting them destroyed. So anyway, I'm just summing it up because I want to get to the point of what I'm talking about. And that is that the business itself was just like a slow burn in the background. My main business was stripping and waxing floors. And I did that for so long, and I was so sick of doing it. And in 2009, I said, that is it. I'm never cleaning another floor again. I don't want to pick up a mop ever again in my life. And I said, I'm going to make money working with Milos Reef, and either I'll make it or I'll starve to death, and I want it to work anyway. And so in 2009, my website became my only source of income, and the information I've continued to provide through the website, whether it's blogs, articles, creature ID, photography, all the different things I talk about, they are always on the website. And they were actually what you saw when you went to the website. And people would so often say, I didn't even know you sold this stuff. It was like this carefully guarded secret. No one should know that I sell products. And my best friend said, Mark, we've got to get your business on the front page. I'm like, no, I'm about education. I care about teaching people, what they need to know so they can be successful. And she said, you got to eat. And I was like, yeah, and you're not wrong. So she designed me a new look for my website. And then over the years, the website has evolved probably 5-6 times. And I met up with Jose, who was a DFW Mass Club member. He also made websites. He was familiar with Drupal, which was the core software I was trying to do myself. And he said, we can make you something so much better and make you so much money. And I was like, okay, well, let's be realistic here. There's one of me. But he inspired me. He made a really nice website, and it became mobile friendly, which was something that I was getting warnings from Google all the time. Your website is not mobile friendly. And I was like, I don't care. But Google cared. And they felt like if your website wasn't mobile friendly, they were less likely to propagate it to the front page because they want to send people to devices where everything looks correct. And I was like, all right. So he made it where it would work on tablets and smartphones and, of course, on the desktop computer. And I've been very fortunate that he's been here for all these years to help me with it. And so, you know, when you go to the website now, you'll see front billing talks about that I sell things, that I take Affirm, which is a payment system if you can't afford it all up front. It talks about Reef Trace, the app I'm a partner in. It talks about the things I sell. And then, of course, all the articles are in the top, and the blogs are in the top, and the photography media section's in there with links to YouTube and Instagram and all those things. But yeah, so I have been actually running this business officially since 2009. In 2016, it became a corporation. And so I'm an employee of my corporation. And my boss is a jerk. He makes me work all the time. But the company has grown and it's doing quite well. And I appreciate it when you guys buy things from me. And I don't actively make sales ads. I don't push out ads all the time. I don't send out email blasts with buy this and buy that, you know, because I get those all the time from everyone else and they irritate me. I mean, it's like delete, delete, delete. And but at the same time, if it wasn't for advertising, you wouldn't know you could go buy something. People wouldn't know that they could find things on my website. And actually, there's still things on the website that need to be added. I've mentioned that in the last week, I've probably put 20 things on the website, and I probably have 30 more to go. So if you see something in the background, you're like, I want one of those, but I can't find it, let me know. Just send me an email, sales@milosreef.com. I actually created an email thing, but I don't see it here when I need it, of course. Actually, this thing like refresh with all my old stuff I deleted. How weird is that? Let's just do one really fast here. See if this works. Yeah. So this is how you reach me. And if you are needing something specific, you can let me know. If I have it, I'll let you know. If I can get it, I'll let you know. And if I don't have it, I'll let you know. So if that would be of benefit to you, feel free to use it. I'm just an email away. Also, I do, of course, check the sales each day to see where we're at, see what I can ship out immediately, see what I can put on the build order. Right now, build-wise, acrylic-wise, is not bad. There's about 7 customers in line, so it's not, like there's a huge amount of wait list of products that need to go out the door, which is really good because, number one, I don't feel overwhelmed. Number two, I can take your order now and you're not going to wait a long time to get it. Sometimes some orders take a long time to get out, but most of the time I do my best to get them out as quickly as I possibly can because I understand you want them. What else can I tell you about the business? I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm just a little guy. Oh yeah, I made this studio. This building that I'm in right now. Here's another angle you can see it at. No, I can't. Let's try this. Will that work? Yeah. So there's another angle, and I can pivot this around a little bit and show you a little bit inside here. Let's do this. We'll just turn it and turn it and turn it. So you can see the camera set up. This is some of the view. I can't zoom in and out, but I could do a little bit better pivoting here. So there are all the badges from the shows I've gone to. There's some club stuff and some art I bought. Let me tighten this up so I don't drop it. We'll just keep turning and turning and turning and turning and turning. And then you're back to me. So put this like right about there. And so, yeah, this is the building. This was kind of a dream of mine for many years. I considered I needed a workshop in basically the backyard of my home. And I don't know, I talked about it for like 4 years or so. And then finally, last year, I committed to it. It was like September of last year when concrete was poured for this exact spot. And then it took a whole year to get this whole building done. And it's great. I love this building. It's nice and comfortable right now. The thermostat says it's a nice, cool 63 degrees. It's raining outside. And I'm out here with you guys streaming. And, we'll be talking about whatever questions you have. So don't worry. It's not going to be just me talking business the whole time. But if there's something specific that I can put in your hands and get it off my shelf, that always makes me happy. So I will, let's see. I used to have a thing. See, everything's gone. We'll just use this for now, I guess. So if you want to shop from Milos Reef, it is greatly appreciated. It's just milosreef.com. That is the website. And if you haven't been on it, if you've just been a YouTuber and you're like, what? He has a website? Yes, go there and just go into the shop. And there are hundreds of items in there. There's lots of stuff to look through. And, you know, dry goods always. It's not livestock. And, you know, it's there for you to help you be successful with your tank. These are the same things that are in the background here are what I use myself. And that's why I sell them, because I believe in them. So that's how I've run my business for a long time. Okay, let's switch cameras again back to here. All right. And I did tell you I promised you a video. So we'll see if I can do this now. Hey, it worked. All right. So, and you can still hear me. That sounds good too. So this is the reef today. I actually set up my camera and told it to record for a long duration. So you're not going to see it looping. You won't just see 30 seconds repeated 10,000 times. This is actually like a half an hour of reef life. And so let me talk about what I've done with the reef this week, because I know a lot of people want to know, what do you do for your maintenance? You know, how do you make this happen? And number one rule is I keep my hands out of the tank. I mean, I need to get my hands in there now, but for the most part, I try to do nothing in the tank whatsoever. So specifically in the last 7 days, I took out all 3 Vortec wet sides to clean them, and I put new ones already cleaned back into place. So I put the clean one in, turned it back on, and all the flow resumed, and then I soaked all the other ones in pump clean, and they soaked for, man, I feel like a day. I just left them on the kitchen counter. It was on my list of things to do. And then finally the next day, I took them all apart and scrubbed them nice and clean. That was one thing I did in the last week. I've refilled my top-off container once or twice. It's actually refilling right now. So I'd say a week ago I did it, and now I'm doing it again. My top-off container can hold about 11 days worth of water, give or take. And usually when it's around halfway or 2/3, you know, empty, that's when I want to go ahead and just refill it. And when I refill it, it refills the top-off container under the frag system as well. I didn't plan it that way, but mathematically, the 2 different containers are sized appropriately for the 2 tanks. And so when one's low, the other has basically the same lowness, if that's a good term. And I've never had one run out without the other, is what I'm trying to say. It was a really weird coincidence that I actually didn't think through. It just happened that way. Then last night, I went ahead and hooked up a reactor full of carbon. I haven't done that in probably 2 months. And when I was looking through the end of my reef, which I didn't film it, you know, from the right side to the left side. But it was looking a little murky or cloudy, and I thought, okay, let me run some fresh carbon on the reef. I also finally forced myself to go up and down the ladder 8 times to put salt in the big water tank behind the reef so I can do some water changes. So that is coming up, and probably this evening. I would like to get a water change done on the reef, and I definitely need to do a water change on Caitlin's reef. Her little tank has been neglected badly for, I feel like, a month. I mean, I cleaned the glass, but it needs water changes because that is its filtration. And it's been waiting too patiently. And that weird brown sargassum-like algae that I talked about in a couple of reels on Instagram, it broke apart and I pulled a piece out, and then another piece came off and it's around the pump. And I'm thinking maybe that algae is not doing well because the water doesn't have all the cool stuff in it because it hasn't been changed properly like it should have been. So today I've got to remove the pump, get all that algae off of it again, because the pump is clean. I already did that 2 weeks ago, and get the algae off the pH probe where it's snagged on there as well. I mean, it's wrapping around everything up there, and vacuum the sand bed and get that all nice and clean. Another thing I did this week was I added some trace elements to my tank on 2 different days. I really wanted to do it daily, but I haven't gotten back into that habit. So I did it twice this week, where I added vanadium, molybdenum, manganese, and then I believe it is time to put in Prodibio today, which will be Biodigest, Bioptim, IOD+, and Stronti+. So all that will go into the system because it benefits the tank. The calcium reactor CO2 tank finally ran dry. I think I've had that tank filled, since the last refill. I feel like it was 18 months since I had to fill it. And so I went to the shop and I brought my tank, and they hand me another one because that's the arrangement we have. It's weird. I bought this beautiful tank. I was so proud of it. It was so pretty. And I stuck it under my tank. And then when it was empty one day, I took it in there to get refilled, and they go, no, we just gave you one of those. And it was all, I mean, it was gross. It was it looked like birds had pooped all over. I was like, fine, thank you. I can't believe I'm not getting I mean, I have a nice tank. It's gone now, you know? So this time I went back and I got a semi-decent tank. And then the guy said, you know, if you Google it, there are actually CO2 tank sleeves. And they use them for like birthday parties and stuff where they don't want an ugly tank because people can see it at the party. And you just put a sleeve over it. I was like, oh, so that's kind of interesting. But anyway, got this huge 20-pound tank of CO2 and it cost me like $23 in tax. It was cheap. I thought it'd be higher. I expected to pay more. So I got that hooked up because the calcium demand and the alkaline demand on this reef is really high right now. All those corals are growing really, really well. And the reactor media has dropped again. Like it's emptied itself out in probably 2 months, about 50% gone. I remember just talking about it not too long ago, telling you that I need to put in, that I had to put in more media, but I wanted to clean it, but I couldn't because the temporary anemone cube is in the way. And so I just topped it off, and that top off is gone. So I've got to open it up and add more media because my tank's having a hard time keeping up with the alkalinity demand as it is right now. Of course, I fed the tank every night. I've been putting in half a sheet of nori pretty much almost daily. I've been trying to step that up. Number one, Spock needs to get a little bit more fat again. She's looking a little thin. I don't like that. And also, from what I've read, the Achilles tang really is a herbivore and needs the greens. I haven't seen her actually go to the feeding clip, but I'm putting it in the tank and the fish rip it off and it goes flying. So maybe it's capturing it over at the other end of the reef. It's possible. By the way, as you're watching the video, keep your eyes open. You might see the Achilles make an appearance from time to time because this is a very long piece of footage, and so it's got to show up somewhere. I don't see it right now. Did I mention I clean the glass? I clean the glass a lot, almost daily, all three sides, you know, the front, the back, and the right end of the tank. And I think that's all I did in the tank in the last week. So, as you know, I mean, maintenance-wise, that wasn't much. Cleaning the glass, feeding the fish, making sure I have top off. Those are the key ones. Replenishing the CO2 tank, and making a new batch of salt water at last. So I have some available. That's been my routine this week. So, yeah, I don't have to do a lot. And I find that that is a pretty good weekly situation for me. I don't spend a lot of time on the tank itself because I don't see the need. I don't know when people say, well, I have to spend an hour a day on my tank. I'm like, how? What are you doing? You know, what exactly are you involved with? Oh, I did empty out the waste collector of the skimmer. So I don't take the skimmer cup off nearly as often as I used to because it all goes into a waste collector, but that was full. Oh, and I thought of something else I did. I replaced the reagent in the Trident today, and I dumped out the waste solution from the Trident, which is the reagents and the water that was taken out of the reef. So I had a half a gallon of purple-looking Kool-Aid that I poured down the drain, and I replaced the bottle so it can keep giving me an accurate measurement. These are the things I do. Now, like I said, there's not a lot. I'm not in there like picking off algae or something like that, or flipping snails or doing anything else. I just, like I said, keep my hands out of the tank. All right. Your medic says, are you able to do Apple Pay or just credit cards versus PayPal? I would love other options. Not a huge fan of PayPal, but that's just me. So when you're buying things from the website, this is actually a good question. Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for the super chat. That was very nice of you. It'll show during checkout Affirm or PayPal. That's all you see, and then you pick one of the two. Affirm is going to be the payment process where they will basically approve you, and then they say you got to make 4 equal payments, and with no interest, which is great. Or you can pay it out slower with interest. But that's the first option. I installed that a year ago, I guess. It's been used, I don't know, a dozen times, 20 times, 24 times. I don't know. Not a lot. Hundreds of people just go the other way. So the other way, it says PayPal, but actually once you hit PayPal and you hit continue, on the screen it'll say PayPal. I feel like it says something else, and then it says debit or credit card. And you can use whatever you want. So you can't use Apple Pay, though. That's a whole other process. But you can use a debit card or credit card. PayPal is just who handles my transaction, but you are not having to physically log into PayPal to do the transaction, is what I'm trying to say. So that must be it. You can choose to use PayPal, you log in. You can choose not to log in and go straight into your debit card or credit card to make your payment. So you actually do have a few choices when it comes to your transaction on my website. All right, let me see what else I've missed here. Michael, if you can't spell stripper right, we can't be friends. I mean, come on, man. Stripper is 2 P's in stripper. Rumbifer says, how's your Achilles tank doing? I don't know. Where is it? I keep looking at the video that's on my screen here so I can see what you're seeing, but I haven't seen it yet. Emmanuel says, how come your SPS corals do not turn brownish even when your nitrates are over 80 ppm? My corals start turning brown over 20, so I've had to start carbon dosing to control them. Because nitrate doesn't equal brown. It definitely contributes to the problem, and with a lower nitrate, you should have even better colors. There's no doubt about it. In my reef tank, it's, I see lots of nice colors, and there's always the ever quest to make it look even more fantastic. And while I want my nitrates to be lower, they currently are not. And so, but why aren't they brown? Number one, most of the corals are not brown corals, which helps. But even if a coral does turn brown, as you fix your water quality, the coral can heal and get back to its original state. So never give up on a coral as long as it's alive. Now, my tank has been around for a super long time. I mean, it's been running for over 9 years. And the corals that I have from the past have adapted and dealt with all my nutty water. And, that's why I always love to say the saying, my reef lives in spite of me. But I've recently added new corals. I added corals a year ago, and they still are very colorful. I added some just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and they're planted, and they seem to be holding their own. They seem to be looking good. They didn't immediately turn brown from touching 80 ppm nitrate. So you see, the nitrate doesn't literally decipher or determine that this coral will suddenly change colors on you. Now, if yours are changing colors, specifically, in the brown, I'm going to say it's probably not just nitrate. There's something else going on. Let's see. Oh, thank you. Ryan says he loves the quality and details of my products with the rounded corners. And I appreciate that very much. And then Kyle says, orders always ship quickly. I'm a happy member of Club Milos Reef. So Club Milos Reef is a group that I have on Facebook. We have been going for 4 years straight. We have over 9,000 members. If you wanted to join the club, here, I'll just put this over the top since we still don't see the Achilles yet. Where is it? There it is. If you want to join, it's facebook.com/groups/Milos Reef. And that group, I approve each person that is added to the club. And I actually read the answers to your questions. I see the comments like, I watch him on YouTube. Yeah. I'm like, okay, you're in. So, I see the comments. Sometimes you guys say some really funny stuff in that application process, and I really appreciate it. The people that don't get approved are usually the ones that didn't answer any of the questions, or they're brand new to Facebook, like you joined a week or two ago. So I don't approve those. I want them to be established. I want them to have a profile with a face or something, just a little bit more proof you're a real person. And, but we've got a really good group, and we've had some really nice tanks posted recently and some cool ideas too. So, if you aren't a member, feel free to join. All right, I'll take that away because we're still watching for this. There it is, Achilles. It's right there. It's right there. Oh, it went into the center behind that big green lithophyllon. So if you're watching this afterwards, you can rewind 10 seconds and you'll see it. Yeah, I don't see it right now. All right. Brian says, I'll be buying my Salifert calcium and magnesium test kits from you at the beginning of each year. I already start earlier this year. Thank you very much. I don't know if Brian, are you the one that contacted me about nitrate kits? Because I'm having the worst time getting Salifert nitrate kits right now. They're just not in stock. So I think you've been waiting. If it's you, if you're wanting one, I don't have it yet. But hopefully we'll get some by the beginning of next year. Sean says, I kind of missed the Shadowcaster. Yeah, so that's the coral on the far left of this video. And it's just not nearly as dense. But the green slimer is growing in that same dense way. So apparently the location dictated why the shadow caster was such a beast of a coral. It had all that flow. It was directly under the main light, and it just became really, really thick. And that's exactly what the Slimer is doing this time. Well, I always had that huge coral at the top of my tank, and I wanted to move it to the far end so that way we'd have more of a continuous, like a low spot working its way up to a high spot to the other end of the tank. That's what I wanted. And in this case, the shadow caster, it's been growing. I mean, there's no doubt, but it's definitely not the dense beast that it was. I wish it was. That's awesome. Brian says, thank you for ingraining in me to do my water tests every Saturday. The past few months I've been doing them on Fridays. Well, that's so close. And I look forward to it now. I'm finally able to keep and grow SPS after 7 years. Well, that's excellent. I'm really glad to hear that. The testing is so important. And it's like you said, I ingrained it. I've been preaching it. And last weekend I told you guys, you got to test your tank. And then of course I had to shut down the live stream. I had to go to a birthday party and I was gone. I only put in like some pellet food before I ran out the door because I wasn't going to be there for the 11 o'clock feeding. And so the next day I got up and I did my tests and I checked my reef, and actually everything was right where it needed to be. There was no surprises. I didn't have to change anything or refill anything or mix up anything, like a new batch of magnesium. That was all on autopilot, which was nice. Queen Anne's Reef asked me, how old is my Achilles? I don't know. I only have had, there it is again, there it is. Look how small it is compared to Spock. I've had it maybe, I don't know, 6 weeks now. And I feel like it's a juvenile. I mean, I literally asked for a small one. And at the time when I was buying it, it was the smallest one in the tank with some others. And it's such a pretty little fish. It's so nice. I'm really glad I got it. I've been wanting it forever. It's one of those things where you just wait and wait and wait, and then one day everything aligns and you get what you wanted. Ellery says, happy post-Thanksgiving and Small Business Saturday. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for saying that. Oh, that's so good. That's so funny. Well, thank you, Ease Reef. I'm going to have you watch my tank from now on. He says the Achilles was just at the algae clip. I have not seen it go to that clip once. And I've watched, and I see all the other fish go there, including the cleaner wrasse is all over it. But I have not seen the Achilles go over there. And then Andy says he got the late notification. Welcome. And Bobby McGee says, I watched your Kalkwasser video with Chris Meckley and have implemented his ACI method with my dose, and my pH has been rock solid. Have you tried out his method for yourself? I have not. I really want the anemone cube out of my way and back on its stand in the kitchen area so that I have space, because I have to put the Kalkwasser somewhere. And I need some freedom. I need some space to work. And so once that tank is out of the way, because it's literally dead center in the back of the sump, blocking the algae turf scrubber, blocking getting the skimmer out easily, blocking cleaning out the sump and getting to the return pump to clean it, all that's just trapped. So once I can get that all gone, I would like to. I did order a box of Kalkwasser powder from ACI. So it's just a matter, and I happened to buy a spoon that measures in grams, like a drug dealer, from Dirk's. And so I can scoop out so many grams of the stuff and mix mine up and hopefully mimic what Chris was recommending. I'm very curious to see what would change. I mean, I don't know. My reef's looking pretty good and I haven't done it yet. So what's more to happen? I mean, maybe nitrates will magically evaporate. Wouldn't that be fun? Ribbity Reptile says, what is your ideal fish and coral quarantine setup if you had lots of room to work with? Well, I would like to have 2 separate tanks for that scenario, and the tanks would just be on autopilot, so they'd always be running all the time. And they would be quarantine tanks. And I've actually done this in the past with a single tank. I just kept the tank running. I made sure to top it off regularly. It had a light that was either turned on or it was turned off. If there was nothing in the tank at all, there was no reason to run the light. And it was a real simple light. It wasn't anything special. It was something from Home Depot. And, when I finally put in something, then I would go ahead and turn on the timer to kick it on and off daily for, 8 hours a day. And I would put in brand new corals in there, and just because I came home with corals And I wasn't, I wanted them, but I wasn't prepared to like put them through a dip and then glue them down to the rock work. And of course, inspect them for pests. Now, I wasn't in that spot, so I would be able to just come home with the corals, float them in that tank, and then 20 minutes later, open the bags and put everything in the tank where I can just observe them. And that's how I did all my stuff back in the day. It was SPS, zoanthids, gorgonians, whatever, they went in there. The fish, I would use the same tank when there wasn't anything in there because I only get fish occasionally. I was talking with someone recently and I said, I think I've bought 7 fish in the last year. And I have most of them. The 2 Ignitus anthias did not make it. They just evaporated. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if they didn't get enough food. I'm not sure what happened, but I was, within a week or so, I had one. And then one day I just realized I didn't see the other one. I haven't seen it. I really don't think I'm going to suddenly see it one day. It's not that kind of a shy fish. So those are the only 2 that didn't make it this year. Everything else that I've put in the tank has done well, which is nice. But for quarantine, I like to have some live rock in there that's dedicated to the quarantine tank for the life of itself. So if you ever put any kind of medicine in there, that rock is ruined, right? So I never, ever am going to take that rock out of that tank and put it in my reef. And so it just has the cheap light, some live rock, top off, and like a maxi jet in the corner to keep circulation in there. And that was it. It was real simple. But, like a decade ago when I had to rebuild the room for this 400-gallon reef you're looking at right now, I removed the quarantine system I had set up. I had a phytoplankton growing station. I was growing brine shrimp. I was doing all this stuff, but I didn't have room for it with a new tank. And so I set up a big frag tank instead. And the frag tank has been kind of a nightmare for me for a long time. So my goals are going to be, once my anemone cube is up and running and done and behind me and back to normal, so you guys can enjoy it again, then I will break down the frag tank system area. I will replace that tank with a smaller frag tank with a quarantine tank next to it that's standalone. The frag tank will have a sump with a skimmer and top off and all that. And then the quarantine tank will also have top off, but it'll be simplified. It'll have, a thermometer. It'll probably use one of the Radion lights because there's 2 on that rack. Put one over the frag tank, one over the quarantine, and it'll just be operational. Just keep it running all the time. So that way it's always ready. If you end up getting something, it's just ready to put stuff in. And that gives you time to observe it, to feed it, to make sure it's okay. If it's sick, you can treat it. And so that's kind of my ideal. I hope that answers some of your questions. Let's see. Phil says, I have a question about turf algae. Have you ever had to fight it? I'm having issues fighting it. It's awful. I'd rather fight green hair algae or bubble algae. Well, turf algae, just by its nature, is going to be a difficult one because it's so low to the rock and you can't like pinch it off. Now, you can treat the tank with fluconazole, which is FluxRx from Blue Life USA. I have that in stock. And I have that for different size tanks too. So if you have a small tank, I've got the small packages, and you've got the larger ones for bigger tanks. And you can treat that. That can help eliminate green hair algae, bryopsis, possibly affect the turf algae. I always recommend lowering the phosphate in the tank when you have algae problems because it will weaken it to where you can deal with it. If you wanted to take out certain rocks that are easy to remove, you could literally drip peroxide on it, or you could even put peroxide in a water pick. That was an idea Jake Adams told us about, 6-7 years ago. And he would water pick off his little frags to get the algae off the bottom with peroxide. It's pretty smart because you can shoot at the spot and just blast it clean. Just make sure you're not inhaling that stuff. It's always, always be careful. But so there's that technique. But you're going to need more grazers to help mow it down. And that might be your only success because I had this weird red turf algae happening in my tank a year ago for my potassium dosing, trying to bring the number back up to normal levels. And I had this weird reddish stuff all over my rock and it's gone. I mean, it just went away. So sometimes stuff will burn itself out. But having plenty of urchins in there to work on it, some hermit crabs, some snails, they will all help work on the system. And then of course, tangs. Certain tangs are going to be much better at it than others. Like I would not expect Spock to take care of turf algae, but The Achilles, the shape of its mouth, it literally is a herbivore. That one would do it. The coal definitely would do it. Yellow tang, not so much. Foxface is another really good algae control fish, but you could get stung. That's why I've never bought one. Not to mention, I don't like what they look like. They just look like a horse to me, and it irritates me. So I don't want a foxface. But the magnificent foxface is one I would consider if it wasn't going to sting me. But since it has those spines on its back, and I could be working on my tank or moving something over and get stabbed, and I don't want to be stabbed, so I don't buy that fish. But it is something that you could possibly put in your tank, maybe, if you are willing to be aware of where this fish is. When I was a kid, my dad had a big predator tank in his bedroom, and my dad says, your job is to keep that lionfish away from me while I clean the glass. So he'd be in the tank with a sponge. I guess this was before there was cleaning magnets. And my job, like I said, keep the lionfish from going over there. And of course, I'm a kid, so what am I gonna do? I mess it up. And I'm getting yelled at by my dad, I told you, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm standing on my chair with my little net trying to keep a lionfish back. So I had to, of course I corralled it again so my dad could keep cleaning, but I got yelled at a lot as a kid. But you might have someone that you can yell at, your wife. You can yell at her when she lets the foxface get past the net. And you might need, it may not be nearly as bad, but with a lionfish you want to be careful. Yeah, Emmanuel, send in an ICP kit test, and let's find out the water sample. I was just talking with people about this on Facebook, and this one person said, yeah, I've never done ICP, it sounds expensive. And I sent him a link to my current report where I showed all the numbers that are on my reef. And it shows the major elements, the minor elements, the contaminants. It shows you all those, and you can figure out what might be in your system that you could eliminate. See what else we got here. See if I can change something here just for fun while the camera's still going. Whoops, lost it. Do this. Oh, it's being so stubborn. Maybe I shan't. Here we go. I'm just doing it because at some point the phone's going to die. So let's use this one for a couple minutes. Mike Spencer says, I've noticed some flatworms on my acro. Any tips on battling them? Well, Acropora eating flatworms are going to be a challenge, and you're going to have to tackle it in different ways. If it's on one coral only, you could remove the coral and get rid of it. That's your first choice. You could remove the coral and treat the coral in a separate tank to get rid of the Acropora eating flatworms. Like literally dip it, blow it off with a turkey baster, hit it with RO water to make them peel off. I mean, these are some techniques so you don't release them into your reef. I accidentally had a whole bunch that were on a coral. I didn't even know I had Acropora eating flatworms. I hadn't seen them in a decade. And when I turkey basted, they went poof, like confetti. I was like, oh my God. I was so mad. And they went everywhere. And I was just like, this was an epic fail on my part. And I was so upset. If I had any clue, I would have broken the branch off and dealt with it in a bucket. But so it ended up they got on some other corals and they affected it. Now, what you can do on a weekly basis, if you don't want to remove the coral, or if they're already in the system and they seem to be on other corals too, you can take a small power head like a MaxiJet or a Sicce, what are they called? The Sicce Synchro Silent pumps. You can hold those they have a long cord, or you can plug into an extension cord for even more distance. And you can hold it underwater and point it at the coral for like 20 seconds. You just hit that coral a couple different angles and then move to the next coral and then move to the next coral and just blow them off the corals. And hopefully the fish in your tank will help eat them, which is the ideal scenario. If you can't do that, then another technique would be to kill all the flow in the tank, just stop all the flow, and then using RO water in a container, fill up a turkey baster and just baste that coral so that the RO water's all over the coral. And then the flatworms will peel off like this. And then you could try to net them out of the tank, which would be a lot harder, especially with acros, because you might snag it, your net on the coral itself. But you're trying to get the flatworms to come off the coral in the tank. And that is doable. I've done it. But then after a few minutes, you need to take your hand and fan in front of that tank to mix the RO with the salt water again, so that coral's not sitting in an RO water bubble. and that way, it will be okay. And you can do this weekly until you finally eliminate them. I mean, there's no reason to think they're going to destroy your entire tank. People tend to react like, oh, if I see my reef is destroyed, I need to, take it down to its, you don't. You can just deal with the problem on the corals in question. The thing is, they don't like every Acropora. They like certain ones. They really like smooth skin acros. And I had a friend mention they like Millie, which is weird because I've never seen them on Miliopora before. I've always seen them on Acropora. And they really like the tricolor Acropora valida. That is like the canary in the coal mine. So if you have a tricolor in there, go check it. You go inspect it carefully. Look for bite marks. Look for eggs. And try blowing it off. See if anything comes off that coral. But they can be on other ones. And I lost a Walt Disney to them. And I lost some... most of my home wrecker, and my Drew's Acro is all but gone. So I mean, you're going to lose a few, but there's other corals you can get, and you can put them in that same spot and move on with your life. There is an article on my website that talks about dealing with Acropora and flatworm, and I'd recommend you read it because that's where I have all my knowledge in one place on one huge long article. Ellery says, what important practices do you recommend on nano tanks, less than 40 gallons, more than on large systems? My advice kind of is always the same. But, with a smaller tank, your water parameters can shift so much faster. The lesser water volume is far less forgiving compared to a big tank. So if you have something starting to go wrong and you don't deal with it, it will go wrong way more rapidly than it would on my tank. So what I'm trying to tell you is that you have to be more proactive with a smaller tank. So, but we're still coming back to the same thing. Test weekly, top off daily, make sure all your gear is working properly. And if you're doing that, then you are winning the battle. Also, temperature is a huge consideration in a smaller tank. It can shift very rapidly, and just like the water parameters can, it can get hot quicker, it can get cold quicker. It just doesn't have that cushion that a bigger tank does. But to fix problems in a smaller tank is always way cheaper than it is to fix it on a big tank. If you're trying to use Nopox, for example, to solve nitrate problems in a 29-gallon aquarium versus me trying to solve it in a 450-gallon system, you can imagine how many bottles of Nopox I would have to use versus the person that used one bottle and solved the problem. It exponentially becomes way more expensive with bigger tanks. The water changes cost you a lot more money. You need more lights, they cost you more money. You've got to use more electricity because you need more heat to keep the tank the right temperature in the winter. There's all those different things that happen that come into play. That's why when I had my 29-gallon, it was doing really, really well. I was very pleased with that tank looked like. I ran it for 7 years. And people said, what you got to do now? I was like, what's that? And they said, you need to upgrade. I'm like, oh no, that sounds expensive. I'm just going to keep using my little 29-gallon and be happy with it and be content. And they would say, oh, you could do something bigger. And then, of course, that stuff rolled around the back of my skull. And I ended up doing a couple of things. I got a 55-gallon used from someone in the local area, and I set it up. And now I had my 29-gallon, I had my 55-gallon, and they were both doing pretty well. And then an opportunity for a 280-gallon reef fell in my lap. And I ended up buying that. And I consolidated all my livestock plus the livestock it came with into this new tank and got rid of the 55 and got rid of the 29-gallon. And I had this huge tank and I had to learn how to use it. And like you were just saying, what are your tips for a small tank? I had no clues what to do with a big tank. And so I was putting in like 2 sheets of nori in my tank a day because there were 6 tangs in that tank. And I was feeding the crap out of them because they looked hungry all the time. And my phosphates were like 3.0. You guys are complaining you don't have any phosphate on your test kit. I had so much phosphate. You could just take a sponge and take it out. Full of, it was terrible. So I spent a lot of money trying to control phosphate in a bigger tank. And of course I needed better lighting, and that cost more money, and everything just costs more money. So enjoy your smaller tanks. They don't cost you as much. You get to appreciate them for what they are. But every single inch of real estate in that smaller tank matters because things grow and take up space rapidly. Danny Santos says, Acros, Hammers, Zoas all look great, but I can't keep any scrolling Montipora. Any idea what might be the problem? So what is happening with the Montipora? What are they just turning white? Are they being picked at or nipped? Or is algae just growing over them? What's happening with them? Because there are a few things with Montipora that are specific. They like good flow because you don't want any detritus to gather on them, because if detritus gathers, by the time you blow it off, it's dead. If you had Montipora eating nudibranchs that eat the Montipora, of course, that's a battle in itself. If you have fish nipping at and eating the polyps right off off the coral itself, it's not going to survive because those little polyps are the mouths that feed the colony. So you need those, and you need magnesium to be probably 1350. I actually personally like 1400. It's not the recommended number, it's my recommended number. Always shoot for 1400 ppm of magnesium, because the higher magnesium level, that higher magnesium level will give you better color. But first you have to get them to live. And then, I mentioned in a stream, I think 2 weeks ago, where I was mad at the fish store for selling me a bad coral, and it was really my flame angel was eating the polyps off of a Montipora digitata. Now, Montipora digitata is the one that makes fingers, versus you want the scrolling, which is going to be more like a Capricornus or Foliosa or one of those other ones that, and then there's other Montipora that are encrusting, like Sunset Montipora, the Montipora Dinos. There's lots of encrusting ones. There must be a dozen. And there are lots of different colors to pick from and styles. For example, I just recently, and you can see it right there in the video on the left side. I wish I could circle. I don't think you see my mouse on the screen, but if you happen to, I'm putting my mouse there, but probably can't see it. On the left side, under the shadow caster, to just the left of the Lobo coral, there is a bright orange dot. That is a Montipora setosa. And it's one that I've always liked. I've always seen people's tanks. I remember going to a fish store in, I'd say the Frisco area, and they grew one that looked like a carnation. It was like a flower. I was like, wow, I've never seen setosa do that. It was so beautiful. It was unbelievable. So, I mean, there are different ones. But when you're trying to get the ones that scroll, you have to wait it out. Now, I just took a picture last night, and it will be on this computer, so I can dump it on the screen on top of this video, on top of me. Let me find it. It's behind everything, of course. I gotta move this window. Let me move this window to get to this window. Here we go. I'm getting there. But I have some Capricornus in my tank right now that is just getting started. Actually, there's a couple different ones. Let me find the word Monty. So this is my purple grape Monty. And it's actually 3 layers, but you see it's starting to do that little curl. That is what's going to make that little thing you like. And then I have another one I posted a picture of 2 days ago. Monty, where is it? Here's one. This one's not curling yet. Not really. But that's a nice looking one. And then there was another one. Might be this one? Yeah. This one here is in the back of my reef. No one ever sees it. It's top secret. And you can see how it's making the curl. And then in the background, that's another huge piece of it that's also making the lower curl. So at some point, I need to try and get a good top-down picture to show you guys of the Montipora. But essentially, the good flow so it stays clean, the stable water parameters, no fish nipping at it, no pests eating and destroying it, and good lighting, of course, and then magnesium are all the tips you need to grow some pretty Monty. All right. The next question says, Rick G, I'm sorry to hear this, says he's got some stringy dinos, most times when cleaning the sand. Nitrates are measuring 25, phosphates are 0.06. If I leave it alone and feed heavy, I get cyano that luckily takes it over. How do I keep my sand bed clean without getting the dino flagellates? And you said stringy, so there's no way that's diatoms. There are different types of dinoflagellates, and some people will buy a $100 microscope and they'll take a sample and they'll stick it on there to figure out exactly what kind they have so they know how to outcompete it. Have you, by any chance, tried using Live Rock Enhance? because that is a waste-consuming bacteria that I have a theory, and I brought this up when I first got the product, that it could help devour cyanobacteria and devour dinoflagellates if they don't get massively out of control. And some people tried it, and some people said it worked, and other people said it didn't do anything for them. But there's so many variables. But if you haven't tried it and you want to try it, there's nothing dangerous about it. I don't recommend dosing more than what it says on the jar. It actually recommends, to use like the little tiny spoon it comes with per 25 gallons. You just put it right in the system. The only thing is you probably want to turn off your skimmer for an hour or two so you don't skim anything out. And the water will get a little cloudy because the bacteria will activate and it'll look a little murky. And then after a couple more hours, the bacteria cloud goes away and your tank should look fine. It'll look normal again. And your skimmer can be operating. And the only thing you don't want to run also, I said the skimmer, but the rule is don't run UV when you first put it in. So if you don't have a UV, then you don't have to worry about that. And if you have a skimmer, I would just shut it off for like the first 30 minutes or so. And it can go everywhere. It can go down the drain. It can be in the socks. It can be, your fish can eat it. It doesn't hurt anything. And I remember when I first was doing it, I wanted to reenact this with Tulio because he kept harassing me to use it. And he says, Mark, have you tried it out yet? I was like, no. He's like, just do it. I'm like, well, I want to film. He goes, just do it. Just do it now. Do it. I mean, he was like Chandler. Do it. It was hilarious. And I was like, okay, well, let me get a cup. He goes, no, just put it in the tank. And I was like, oh my God. Because even on the instructions, it says to take it, put it in a cup of water and let it sit for 5 minutes. He goes, just put it in. So I just put in my scoops, which was like 22 scoops for my tank or some number like that. And you just saw these like beads just raining down and the fish were eating it. I was like, the fish are eating it. And he goes, that's fine. And I was like, okay. And he's like, that's it. You're done. And I was like, okay. So, oh, by the way, since you just put that in your tank, don't film your tank for the next couple of hours. It's going to get a little cloudy. I was like, thanks. But other than that, it does make your tank, it makes your rock look cleaner. And the product says to put it in 3 times the first week and then twice a week thereafter. And you can do it forever. You can just keep doing it. This is what I'm talking about. Live Rock Enhance. And they only come in one size, $20 a jar. This thing here probably treats something like, oh, it doesn't say. But, it probably treats like, I don't know, I'm going to guess 1,000 gallons or something. I think I can get 2 of these to do my tank, like a lot. But I don't, inside is going to be a bag with a powder inside and a little tiny spoon. So you might try that. It might help you with your battle. Otherwise, there is a dinoflagellate support group on Facebook, and they are going to say, which one do you have? You need to put it under a microscope. And then they will tell you the plan of action to get rid of it. And there are lots of different things to consider. There's Dr. Tin's waste away. There's the micro bubble scrubbing. There's the dosing or not dosing of silicates. I mean, there's a lot to it. But this might be, if it's just like a small irritation thing happening on your sandbed, that Live Rock Enhance might be your solution. Maybe. And you could tell me if it worked. I would love to get a success story from you. Like, hey, guess what? I used it for the last 4 weeks and it's gone. I would love to hear that because I think it can do it. Because what I think what it'll do is I think the bacteria will outcompete the bacteria and the dinoflagellates. And that's what we want. We want one bacteria to consume the other and get rid of it. Reef and Dive, thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate it. Hey, we reached the end of the video. Let me hit play. That was it. I was trying to think how I could put that on. I didn't do it. I was looking, but I didn't see it to loop that, so it would just keep running continuously. That would have been nicer. You would have never known. Let's see. Rick, back to your question. He's asking a little bit more information. He provided some more comments. He says, now that I've removed some of the chaetomorpha from my reactor, the dinoflagellates have turned back to cyano. They're 2 different things. Cyanobacteria is one thing. Dinoflagellates are another thing. They both exist in nature. One is way more toxic and our cleanup crew won't eat it. So that's a problem. But if you want to scoop some together to siphon it out, you could. But usually when it comes to dinoflagellates, if you were to try to do water changes and cleanings, whatever you're putting in the tank new, like the new salt water with all of its great trace elements, it seems to fuel it and grow it even worse. So usually they say don't do any water changes during a dinoflagellate outbreak because you don't want to give it anything extra. You don't want to feed it. Don't feed the beast. Okay? So for now, I would look at that. There is a technique of leaving your tank lights turned off for 3 days in a row to get rid of cyanobacteria. And that has worked. I've done it myself. I lost a couple of frags, but I mean, my whole reef looked fantastic at the end, and I thought it was worth it. But dinoflagellates don't just go away because you didn't have the lights on for a few days or a few weeks. Because I know people that have wrapped their tanks and turned the lights off for 3 weeks trying to eliminate that stuff. But it is a living beast. It's like Venom from Spider-Man. It's really bad stuff. And we do not want it to take off. So you're going to have to do some more reading to decide what's best for you. But you might just try the live rock enhance, see if that helps. By the way, I also think it can help knock down cyanobacteria that's trying to take hold in a tank as well. Thank you, Christine, for putting the link to FluxRx. Adam says, the fox face walks into a bar and the bartender says, why the long face? Ba-da-boom. Huang says, you need to go back in the house and put more algae on the clip. The Achilles looked like it couldn't get enough. Yeah, I see it back there now. That's awesome. And yeah, I put in a sheet right when I filmed this. So, I mean, they had already devoured it. Let's see. By the way, I'm going to put in a plug for Coral Magazine. I carry these magazines on my website. They are $8 a piece. Shipping is $9. Sorry, it just is what it is. So maybe get some more things to put in the box to make shipping worthwhile. This magazine is so good. I was actually reading this issue earlier today. There's an article in here by Martin Moe called Urchin Renewal. And he's talking about what it was like back in the day. I want to read to you guys this first paragraph. For a fledgling 25-year-old marine biologist in 1962, it was my first assignment with the Florida Marine Laboratory and promised to be a wonderful opportunity and experience. Survey the state offshore fishing in the waters of the Sunshine State. I visited every coastal county in Florida, interviewed fishermen in every segment of the fishing industry, and spent time fishing and sometimes diving with professional fishermen from Fernandina Beach in Nassau County in the north of Key West to the southernmost Monroe County. At that time, a young John F. Kennedy was president. John Glenn became the first human to orbit the Earth. The first James Bond film, Dr. No, appeared. The Beatles had their first hit, and the coral reef tract along the east coast of the Keys was one of the most magnificent barrier reefs in the world. That's the first paragraph. This is such a good story. And so he talks about what has changed in the last 50 years and how he has been an active participant in putting in diadema urchins back in those reefs to help them fight off all the algae that chokes out the corals. And, they talk about the other issues that are going, that are taking place there. But so I highly recommend this magazine to you. It's full of great educational information. I always pick up tidbits. And I forget them too. But like, for example, there was one, well, how about this? The flame angel. Did you know, because I didn't, there are no two alike in the world. They're like fingerprints. They all look slightly different. I'm like, holy crap, I did not know that about flame angels. I thought they're kind of the same. But there's an article later in this issue that talks about identifying fish. And it talked about how you can recognize, like if you have 5 of the same fish in your tank, if you look really closely, especially around the eye and the cheek, you'll see markings that change on everyone. You'll actually be able to name those fish if you like to and know that that's Tom. And it's not the other one that you think is Tom, because you'll know because the squiggly mark has like a hook, that's orange or something. And I was like, I didn't know that. So he goes in there and shows like the different markings on the side of this one fish. Oop, it's trying to follow me because the camera's doing that thing. But this is close-ups of right at the gill area of a fish. And all those different markings. So anyway, lots to learn here. If you aren't a subscriber, you can buy them at my website. If you like it, definitely subscribe to Coral Magazine so they come to your mailbox every 2 months. or buy them from me every 2 months. Because I always bring in a few issues, but you'll have one of these cards inside your magazine. I just recommend you guys get it. It's such interesting information. And, if you're liking this channel, well, you got to like Coral Magazine too. We're like a package deal. And no, they did not know I was going to do that. Okay, let's go over here. Switch to this camera. All right, the next question. I'm reading it so I understand what I'm being asked here. Okay, so Emmanuel has a red chalice that is 6 inches large. It's red with yellow polyps. It's outgrown his LPS tank. It's almost touching the glass. Mine is touching the glass. The way it's grown, it's become a rounded cup shape. So are they growing based on, is the flow the factor to why they grow into that shape? And, what are the recommended water parameters for chalices? It's usually having, chalices, I've had them now for a super long time. I don't remember when I got my first one, but I've had them for at least 12 years, maybe longer. And they just like reef parameters. I mean, my tank has high nitrate. Mine are growing like crazy. I've had the tank at lower nitrate and last year, and the ones that were really punished by the potassium problem that occurred, they healed even under low nitrate. So I'm not going to say that nitrate has a bearing on the coloration and the growth rate of a chalice, but staying clean, having good flow, having good lighting, I think is important. But the nice thing is they're not super light demanding. They can. I love putting chalices down on the sand bed. I do it all the time. And that my par down there is maybe 100 to 160. That front right corner under my little picture there, that's a huge chalice. And it is, I would say maybe 80 par in that corner. And that coral is growing gangbusters. I mean, at this point, removing that's going to be a pain in the butt. I actually have to get my arm, completely submerged in there to pull that darn thing out and rescue the corals that are getting eaten alive by that thing, because it just keeps growing and spreading and stinging as chalices do. But why they choose their shape, is flow a factor? Yeah, I think so. I mean, flow is so important to keep them clean so nothing sits on them. If you have something just fall on it and die, like let's say a snail, and the shell's just there, and you don't get that shell off of there, you'll have a dead spot. It'll just happen. So you want to make sure it stays clean. Now, there was a guy, we were on a tank tour, and he had one that looked like a sombrero. And we were just like, how on earth does this coral look like that? I mean, the middle was a point, and then it had the rim, and then it was curled up on the sides. It looked like a sombrero. It was crazy. And we're like, what is the deal with this coral? Explain it to us. And he said, I don't want it to grow on the rock. So every few days, I reach in, I lift it up, and I turn it, and I put it back down. So the coral keeps trying to grow up the rock, and he turns it. So the next piece grows up, and the next piece. And he has literally created this hat-looking chalice. The funniest thing ever. And I don't know what ended up happening with that, but that was so hilarious. None of us would have expected that answer. So, flow can affect it, and also the hobbyist can affect the shape of the coral. That happens. Let's see. Rick says, I'm going to go ahead and get some of that live rock enhanced. He says, I'm also thinking about Microbacter 7 that's showing up tomorrow. Yeah, Microbacter 7 could help too, possibly. I mean, it wouldn't hurt for you to join the Dinoflagellate support group now on Facebook. It's not hard to find. Just type that in, and it exists. And you can join it and see what they say. I don't remember anything negative being said about Microbacter 7. Probably be okay. I don't want you to do something that grows it more. That's all I'm saying. So, hey, look, I got to all the questions. I did it. We can just end the live stream here. Perfect. I do want to remind you right now, this is a perfect time to mention it. Today is Water Test Saturday. Please do test your water. It's so important. And I can't emphasize it enough. If you are not testing your water weekly, things can go wrong. And just to say it looks okay, it's fine, is not a definition. It is not definitive at all. We want to make sure we know what these numbers are and make the corrections. And some of you have automated systems. You've got the Trident, or you've got the Reef Bot, or you've got the Alcatronic, or whatever you got. And so it's doing it, but double check it. Just like having a salinity probe that's in your tank that's telling you the salinity all the time, or pH probe that's telling the pH all the time, we still need to double check them with a refractometer with calibration solution to make sure the numbers we're being told are accurate, because usually when one of these numbers wanders away, we start losing livestock. And water tests save lives. That is a saying that Caitlin came up with 2 years ago. I loved it. I've been using it ever since. I still need to put it on a shirt, but it's absolutely true. And all the public aquariums, their daily job is to test the water in the tank, of every tank in the facility. You have one tank, or maybe you have a few in your house, depending on how many you've bought. But your job is to test the water. Now, I'm not telling you to test daily. I'm not a lunatic, but to test it weekly is very reasonable. And most of the kits that you buy are rated to test the water 50 times, which is basically once a week for an entire year. And test kits do not last forever. So just because there's liquid still in the bottle when you shake, it doesn't mean you can keep using it and get accurate readings. These things do deteriorate. Some people even will use test strips, which shock me. They are one of the least accurate ways of measuring water, except when they're brand new. Because when you first open it for the first time and you take the strip out, it's a brand new, it hasn't been exposed to oxygen. And that's why they say on the jar, take out a strip and close the jar tightly. And I always thought, why do they say that? What is the big deal? Well, the oxygen getting into that jar is actually deteriorating all the rest of the strips. And so by the time you're getting down to the halfway point, or even further, they're less and less accurate. So I don't recommend test strips at all. I recommend test kits. I've got Salivert here. I got Elos here. These are both good brands to consider. The Elos Magnesium is the hardest kit of all the Elos kits. Still doesn't take long with a Smart Stir. So with a Smart Stir, I take my little beaker, I put it in there, put the bead in there, put my water sample, and then I count my drops. It tells me, usually it's between 29 and 34 drops, and it's turned green. I mentally remember that number, and then I dump it out, and I put in another water sample, and I put in the other 3 reagents, wait 30 seconds, and add the final drops to make it change color, and I do the math, and it tells me my magnesium is 1350. I mean, it's not a nightmare. It's the hardest one, but I mean, no matter what you're using, it's gonna be, the magnesium is always the tricky one. Now, a little unknown fact about magnesium: when you're testing, there is a chance that you'll get a weird reading, because it is possible to skew the results. And so if you are having a question about a test result that you got, what you should do is test it 3 times in a row. So you just did one, you got this weird number, test again, write down that number, test it a 3rd time, write down that number, and then divide by 3. That will give you the average of the 3 tests and give you, hopefully, an accurate number. Also, they do have a date on the top that tell you when it expires. This one says it goes bad in February of 2024. So, you want to be aware of that. And if you don't have a date on your box, like this one from Elos doesn't have an expiration date, when you pull open the lid, take a Sharpie and just write the date you opened it. Like today would be 11/26/2022. So I would put that in here, and then every time I open it for the next year, I'm going to see that date. And when I get near, November of next year, if this isn't empty, I'll toss it out and get a new kit, because I want to always have nice fresh reagents. Since I mentioned, I'll show it to you again, the Smart Stir. Awesome gizmo. I love this thing. I'm going to open it up. I'm telling you guys need to own this. I have about 10 of these in stock, so I expect all of you to buy one for Small Business Saturday. Little me-lift pressure. So here's a Smart Stir. Look at that thing. Sexy. It's got an on-off button right here. You have a little tiny USB wire. You can charge it with one of those little power bricks you have from any other device in your home, whether you have the Ring or Vivint or an Apple device or whatever. Those little power bricks, just plug this thing in, plug it in here. It'll be red initially, and then when it's fully charged, it'll turn blue. And then once I've charged it, it's good for like 2 months of using it every single week. Also inside the box is this little wire and then the tiny bead. Do not lose this bead, but if you do, I sell more. But don't lose the bead, all right? So I'm going to show you. Here's our bead. Smaller than a pill. When I'm done with the bead, every single time I'm done doing my testing, I put the bead right there. So it's always inside there. And that way I never ever lose it. If you put it anywhere else, you may lose it. If you drop it on the floor, it may evaporate. Don't drop it on the floor. Don't pour it down the sink. But if you drop it in the sink, you might get lucky and it might be stuck to the crisscross under the little basket strainer thing. But, and I've done that. I had it stay right there on that little crisscross in my sink. I was like, oh. So I had my tweezer things and I'm trying to grab it and I'm so worried when I drop it, my hand's shaking because I'm so nervous. And I got it and I pulled it out and saved it. But I did end up losing one bead one time. It bounced. I heard it go tick, and I never saw it again. And I really think one day when I pull out my dishwasher, it's going to be stuck to the motor underneath. But I got my new bead. Anyway, keep it right there. You'll always know where it is. And then you're probably thinking, well, what is this for? Well, believe it or not, it's like a twist tie for a loaf of bread or something. It's got a wire inside, so the bead is magnetic to it. So if you have the bead inside a beaker with reagent and you wanted to remove the bead, you could just put this into the beaker and grab the little bead and carefully, it'll shake off, but you could extract it from the liquid and rinse it off and you've got this little wire. I use it for the API beakers because they're so skinny. So what I use is a Red Sea beaker that fits perfectly. The Elos fits in there too. The Salifert does not, it's the wrong shape. And then I put the API inside the Red Sea beaker so the API vial won't fall over. And it's so easy to use. This thing's like 35 bucks. It's awesome. It'll make water testing so much easier for you because you just hit the button on the front, let it start spinning, and it'll just mix as you're counting the drops. Drop, drop, drop. And it's just the whole time's mixing. And you see the color change right in there. It's super easy to use. I'm telling you, I've been preaching that thing for too long. And so if you don't have one, you need to give yourself one. Not for Black Friday, not for Cyber Monday, for Small Business Saturday. I'm putting it all back in here. Someone's going to get this package and say, this has been opened, I can tell. Because I already have one, so I don't need a second one. Anyway, awesome little device. And before I had this, I had that 3D printed one I did a video about, and I loved it. So I'm just telling you, I mean, as soon as this thing came out, I jumped onto this. I've been using it ever since. It is super. And it actually makes water testing way more fun. Way less stressful. When you're trying to hold that beaker and you're having to shake with one hand and put in a drop and shake and drop, oh, I hate that. None of that once you have one of these. Okay. Let's see if there's another question here somewhere. Oh, great. I see something. I'll bring it up in a second. Hey, Christine, thanks for putting these links up. I really appreciate it. Claudia says, I recently did a tank transfer, and a few days later, every surface had a film. I added some live rock. Let's see, I think there's more. Enhance after the tank transfer. So there was a film of something. Oh, and a couple days after adding the product, the tank looked so clean, so I highly recommend it. Oh, that was nice to hear. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Yeah, sometimes we do have some weird things that happen in our tanks, especially with a tank transfer. It could be a bacteria thing, it could be a phytoplankton thing, but a lot of these things can heal themselves. They can work themselves out. But yeah, Live Rock Enhanced definitely does work some magic. And I like it a lot. I don't often think about it. It's sort of like Benepets. It's a food I like to use, but I have to remember to use it. And so if I literally had like a schedule on the wall, like, it's Sunday, Live Rock Enhanced Day, I'd probably do it. Because I already have a rule of thumb with Prodivio. It's always on the 5th and the 20th. And I do that every single month. And so I just have to look at the calendar to know if it's time. XJet says Microbacter works great against dinoflagellates. Thank you for letting us know, because I wasn't positive and I didn't want to say the wrong thing. Hillbilly Reefer says, I have an Aptasia eating filefish, which I know may nip at soft corals, but what about SPS? I have suspicions. Your suspicions are correct. They will nip at some of your SPS, and they'll also wedge in between them, and just the wedging technique can do some damage as well. So it's just something to be aware of. It's not the end of the world, but it could drive you a little bit crazy. Rather Be Traveling says, what is the best way to remove frag plugs? I got some corals from ORA, and I have to say they are some of the biggest frag plugs I've ever seen. What are the biggest frags on them? Yeah, they are really difficult to remove. I believe that it's a black plug, and I think they have a socket in them where the coral is like glued into the center. What you could use is grasp the base of the frag with like bone cutters and just kind of rock it back and forth to hopefully pluck it out of the frag plug itself, because that is a big chunky plug. You'd have to have a massive hole in a rock to just drop it in there nicely and make it invisible. So, and I've never kept the ORA plugs. They are too big. I don't know why they're the way they are, because they're kind of a pain, but I would say just try rocking back and forth. The other thing is, if let's say you break the coral off and there's some life still on there, you could take that plug, you could put it somewhere in your reef, in the back somewhere, or on a frag rack or whatever, where I can't see it, and let that grow another coral. So you have one growing on the rockwork, and you've got a baby happening in the background to have two instead of just one. So you could do that. You could watch that tissue turn into another coral. And that way there's no waste, and you even get a perk later on. Trevor says, the Smart Stirrer is amazing. See, I paid him $1 to say that at this exact moment. Buy extra beads to keep one in every vial too. Yeah, you could. I do sell the beads. I actually, I mean, I only buy so many. I didn't like buy 5,000 beads. I've got like 9. But, occasionally someone says I need a bead, and I mail it to them. It's no big deal. And, a bead is like $3, and I mail it, for the price of a postage stamp. So it's not bad. But, yeah, you can get extra beads if you want to. And you can just let me know, and I'll help you take care of it. So, again, if there's anything that you're wanting to buy that you might have saw in the background that you couldn't find on the website, I can always invoice you directly. You don't have to wait for it to be on the website. Just tell me what you're looking for, and I will take care of you as best I can. Let's see. I haven't talked about the Sicce products, have I? Should we do that for a couple minutes here? Because we've talked about our other stuff already. Okay. This is a really nice water change pump. It's big, it's noisy, and it moves water. And the threaded part here, right here, fits a garden hose. And the nice thing is you just set this down into your container, and it will suck all the water out of your bucket or barrel or trash can to this much water left. It's 3 millimeters of water left in the bottom of the container. It's insane. It's super easy to take apart and clean. You don't have to have any tools. You just untwist it with your hand. And I've been using this to dump water out of my tank and pump water in. Super convenient. I just plug it into a power strip, so I have an on-off button. And I can just toggle the switch and kick the pump on and start sending water in. And if you put this in your reef tank, you just want to put it somewhere safe because it's big. I mean, it's a big brick. Let me see. When you're putting it in, like when I put it in my tank, I want to be very careful not to hit the SPS corals and break them. So here's the pump with a super long cord. And this is where the water draws in through these tiny little holes. So you literally can put it inside your tank and it'll suck water in, but it won't capture a fish and kill it. And you've got your handle here on the top to grab it, and then you can put your hose on there. I've been jamming 1-inch braided hose on this because I have a big, like 42-foot long piece of hose. So this thing here is great. And when you want to take it apart to clean it, you pull that ring off, and then you pull this off, and inside is your impeller. So I have one of these in stock because I sold the other one before I could even get on the website. So clearly I need to get more of these. And I believe it's 109. I'm not going to open up each one of these, I promise. But I thought I can show you this one. This is the Sicce SDC 3.0, and it moves between 260 and 800 gallons an hour, and it can be controlled with an app. It can be used internally or externally. So it can be in a sump or next to the sump. And this one here is an in-tank power head, the Extreme SDC. This one moves between 270 gallons an hour and 2,250 gallons an hour. So you have a huge amount of flow control. And you can hold this on the tank magnetically, and you can point it whatever direction you want to point it. You can point it toward the front and have it ricochet off the glass and go across the reef. You can have it pointing up to make the surface ripple. You can have it shoot behind the rockwork to keep detritus from building up back there. So I've got a couple of these in stock. And then I got these little tiny Synchro Nano pumps. These are like the old school Maxi Jets. And these right here will work really well with the VCA nozzle to vacuum clean your sump. So if you're trying to get the detritus out of your sump, this is a 3D printed solution that they came up with a couple years ago. So this one here is your vacuum nozzle. It looks a lot like the kind you use when you're vacuuming your car at the car wash, right? And this blue part here that you can kind of see sort of behind this tag, that would fit onto this power head. And you would use it to suck the water in here, and it would pump the water and detritus into a nearby bucket. And then if you wanted this to fit on a different pump, like a Maxi Jet, you can just take that blue part out, which is made for the Sicce pump, and it'll fit a regular Maxi Jet. And on the tip here, it's got this blue part with a screen so that no big stuff can get in there and obstruct this, which is really nice. So if you're really cleaning up a lot of detritus and you get some big pieces stuck here, you can just take it out of the sump, tap it on the bucket, knock some stuff off, put it back in the water and keep going. And this is how I clean sumps. I mean, it's so convenient. And then he came out with this crazy crevice tool. Same thing as cleaning your car, same principle. So you can get in those spots between the baffles maybe, and you can go ahead and clean them. So these are really nice things to have in your possession for cleaning purposes. I mentioned the ICP analysis test you can do. I have 2 of these kits left in stock. I'm going to start carrying another brand as well. So I've used this one in the past. I like it. They give you a lot of different readings of what's going on with your water column, and the results are pretty quick. You can just mail this with the label inside that should cover your shipping, but I know they've changed some things recently. So there's a QR code now involved, and so you might have, there might be a learning curve, but you send in your water sample, their kit, they'll measure your tank, and they'll even check your RODI water. And this one here, I believe, is $40. Another couple things from VCA I'll talk about. So you guys know about the random flow generator, the nozzles that are printed in their little factory. They make thousands of these things. And you just press them on the end of your lock line, and it changes the flow. It gives you way better flow in your tank. Well, they came up with a new one that's made of rubber. I think I showed these to you a week ago. Show them to you again. See, you can squeeze it. It's rubber. 3D printed rubber. Neato, huh? So this one's a 3/4 inch. I keep 3/4 inch, and I keep 1 inch in stock of both. I even have some 1/2 inch of these if you need it for a smaller tank, only of the rigid. And then, of course, if you're into controllers, I'll show you my best controllers right now. This is the Apex. This is what I use on my tank. Inside there, you have your controller brain. You've got your pH probe and your temperature probe, and you've got your energy bar that has 11 outlets on it to control your tank and give you notifications via the app, which you can look at on your phone, or you can log in with a browser on any device, and you can see what's going on with your tank. You can also control things with your tank remotely. You can solve problems. It's a really great device I've been using for a long time. And then in addition to this one, I started using the hydros. So I'm using this on my smaller tank right now, and I might use it on the frag system as well. I kind of think I want to put it over there. So this one here is a kit. This is the X4 Pro Pack, and this one has the 8 outlets right there, and it's got sense ports on there for measuring pH and temperature, And trying to remember what the ports all do because it's new to me. You've got your 0 to 10 volt variable rate ports. All the things are color coded to make it easier. And they have a great group on Facebook where they'll answer all your questions. They've got like a ton of videos on their channel to help you understand how to choose and set up your own hydros controller. So if that's something you're looking for, I have the 3 different sizes in stock right now. This is the best one I have. And then there's the X4 pack that's not the Pro. And then I have the X2, which is like the beginner starter. If you just want to monitor and just know what's going on with your tank, but no control at all. But it's expandable. All these are expandable to where you can add more and more pieces to make it more and more complex. So. Yeah. So that's kind of a tour of some of the things we talked about today. I hope that you enjoyed today's live stream. I did. I liked being in here, talking with you guys, and being able to answer your questions as best I can. And, you know, I really do appreciate the support you guys have given me over the years. I know a lot of my customers are literally coming from YouTube. And I'm not oblivious to that at all. I feel like my YouTube relationship has really benefited my business. And there's always room for growth, obviously. And the reason I built this really nice building here, my studio, is so that I could be even more productive and get them out more quickly and be able to build things in bulk, you know, to build many things at once. Like yesterday, 3 different things were ordered that day and I had all 3 already done. And I was so excited. I could just put them in the box and send them out the same day. That isn't always the case when it comes to things that I fabricate myself, because I do a lot of acrylic work. And a lot of the acrylic work I do is custom. It has to fit an exact situation someone asked for. Like yesterday, I had someone call me up and said, I want this exact thing. I was like, okay, I need the exact dimension. And so we're working that out. But if you're, you know, if you're wanting something that I can fabricate, like I make top-off containers, I make those peacemaker boxes that you put your fish in to keep them from being attacked. I make the little brackets to hold your Vortex on the side of the tank. And I'm working on an idea for the MP40s. I know that's been an ongoing question, and I know you've been waiting patiently. But I'm kind of thinking I might have to do those with laser cutting because they're just too small for the CNC to cut out. So that will be something I'll be working on here in the coming weeks, hopefully, and see if we can come up with a working prototype that works. I would love that. Skimmer stands, I make those all the time. The power brick racks, where you have those power bricks for all your devices, I make these acrylic racks that you just put all the bricks on there and screw it to the stand, and it keeps them up, away from getting wet, and they're all tidy and they're held in place with Velcro straps that are included. I mean, these are the kind of things I sell. There's a lot of things on my website in the acrylic section. You can go check it out. And if you have any questions, just email me and I'll be happy to answer them. All right, let's see if there's any more questions and we'll wrap this up. Oh, Rather Be Traveling says, when is the best time to collect the water for an ICP test? There really is no specific time. I would say grab it an hour before you're going to ship it or mail it. You know, I mean, I would just grab the sample and do it. I wouldn't want to like get it the night before and package it and then finally mail it out the next day after sitting in the car all day. I wouldn't do that. But a nice thing that you might consider doing is, let's say you're testing your water on Monday instead of Saturday. And you do all your water tests and you also scoop out a sample and you package that and ship it off to ICP. Then when those results come in, you can compare them to your test kits and see how close your kits are to their readings. And it's always nice to just confirm your numbers are accurate. And I do that. I definitely double check my magnesium against theirs, my calcium against theirs. I don't think they'll do alkalinity because I think that drops off just in storage inside the jar. So I don't think that one works. But then they'll measure all the other things like iodine and fluoride and potassium and zinc. And they'll look for arsenic and the things that are bad for your tank, and they'll show you if they have those, and you'll know these numbers, and you can start identifying where these things are coming from and how to keep them out of your tank. So that's usually what I would do with those. Is I would take the sample, you know, within mere hours of when I'm going to ship it out. Usually mine's like 30 minutes before I go out the door. Gavin says, have you ever done hydrogen peroxide dips for frags with nuisance algae? Yeah, I have. I've done it where I have a small little tiny bowl and I put in the peroxide, or I do peroxide and water if you want to dilute it a little bit. And I'll hold the frag and submerge the plug, and I like turn it to get all of the plug covered in peroxide. And then after that, I go ahead and I will then dip it in another bowl of tank water to kind of dissipate the peroxide before I put it in my tank. Because if you've ever taken something that had peroxide on it and put it in your tank, your reef reacts. You will see a change. ORP could change, pH could change, and definitely you'll see your snails all heading straight up the glass. It's a funny thing. Justin says, I have an RO, a Reef Octopus internal 150 skimmer, and I change the filter socks every 3 days. My skimmer doesn't collect much in the cup, whether it's wet or dry skimming. Are there too little dissolved solids for the bubbles to collect? Well, it could be. I mean, you didn't say how old your tank is, how long it's been running. You just said you're really staying on top of your sock maintenance, which is excellent. But it really should be catching some stuff. So, like, is your cup filling up with like this much skimmate once a week, or is it like this much skimmate? Is it just tiny? Is it just because it's light colored doesn't mean later on it won't change, be much more dark and rich as your tank gets more established and the bioload becomes heavier and you're feeding more heavily. But good job on keeping those socks clean. I don't know that you need a smaller skimmer because you didn't tell me the size of your tank, you didn't tell me the bioload, you didn't tell me the age of the tank, so I don't have enough information to address that. So as usual, someone asks me one question, I ask them back 10 questions. I do that all the time. You see that in all kinds of threads on Facebook. Somebody will post something and you see all the advice, and then there's me. What about this? I always want to know more before I give an answer. Mackenzie says, the 3D printed Polyp Lab ceramic tile holder, do you sell them? No, I haven't even heard of those. I don't think I've seen them. But yes, Andrea's completely right. Slide Lock does make a frag rack that holds their special plugs. So there's that as well you could look at. And then, oh, I'm sorry. Slide Lock does both. So she's replying to Justin about the skimmer. There is a way to shrink the neck of your skimmer, and that could be a temporary solution until you have a heavier bioload. And then you can remove that temporary thinning of the neck and go back to the normal size that the skimmer is made. And then back to Mackenzie's question, they have these special holders for the different tiles and plugs and stuff for the racks. There's a whole kit, and you may find something in there you like on Slide Lock's website. So Slide Lock just helped 2 people at once. Lincoln Town says, are peppermint shrimp nocturnal? No, I think they're more active at night because they are timid. They like to hide. But I've seen them out and about in the tank during the daytime too. But I think they're more active at night. Froof says, any tips for getting rid of spaghetti worms? None. They are awesome. Why would you get rid of them? They're fantastic. They are actually a really good part of your sand bed. And whenever I set up a tank, I go find some in another tank and put them in that tank to get some in there because I want them in there. They are putting out those spaghetti noodle looking appendages to capture food and waste and consume it and keep your sand bed cleaner. So they're a good thing to have. But if you hate them and you don't want them in your tank, a butterfly fish will very likely eat them. Your medic, thank you very much for the super chat. I will have to send Andrea a cup of coffee. He said, shout out to Andrea Christine for all the links. Great teamwork, great channel. Thanks, Mark. Thank you very much, your medic. Gavin says, do you believe the refugiums are beneficial for fighting nuisance algae in nano all-in-one tanks, or do you think the refugium size is too small? It's kind of hard. The smaller the smaller the tiny footprint, the less impact it's going to have, but you are dealing with a much smaller ecosystem. So there can be some benefit. I've seen some people swear by them and had them on smaller tanks. My smallest tank was a 29, and I had a 14-gallon sump underneath, and a big chunk of it, most of it, was the refugium. So I had a decent sized one. I never tried to have like a hang-on back that was wrapped with electrical tape, with a light on top to grow some algae. I never tried that technique that others have done. So you may find that it doesn't have an impact. It just depends on how well it's doing. If it's growing algae in abundance, it really should help outcompete what's happening in the reef tank itself, in the all-in-one area, where the livestock is. But the all-in-one area is still way bigger than the refugium hiding in the back. So there is a competition going on. But generally speaking, I like to say that your refugium should be 10% of the display. So if it's like 1% of the display, yeah, I don't think it's going to do much. It might be a fun hobby, a little side thing going on in your tank just to make it a little bit more crazy. But will it be really beneficial? Can't say. I knew one guy who had a reef tank. He was a member of our club years ago. And then he had a series of shelves next to the tank. And he had, man, I'd say 12 of these all-in-one tanks. And they were all refugiums tied to that one tank, to that reef. And I was like, what? And the funniest thing is that one day he finally took it all down. And when he was taking it down, he discovered that he had not glued the plumbing together. He had just press fit it and forgot to glue a joint. And all those years it worked. There was a leak, but it wasn't a bad enough one. And it took him years to finally discover the leaky spot where he just missed one connection. But yeah, that was pretty crazy. I have a whole wall of refugiums for his reef tank. So sometimes having a standalone one next to it is better than a little tiny thing hanging on the back. Okay. Well, Justin, if you've got a 180-gallon 4-year-old reef with 15 fish, I think your skimmer should pull out more stuff. So yeah, you might try the slide lock adapter and see if that could make a difference with your skimmer and not have to replace it. It's easier to put in a little mod kit to shrink the neck and maybe make it more efficient. So check out their website like Andrea recommended and see what that does for you. And I'm sure they will appreciate our shout out to them. Ryan's a great guy. Chris says, I have a sump in my garage and I'm close to the ocean. You lucky duck. My pH range is 8.3 to 8.5. It's been calibrated after a large water change, and after a while it'll climb to 8.6. Is that too high? I'm actually surprised that the people are telling me they're having these higher numbers. I'm seeing more and more posts in the last 5 to 6 months where people are talking about pH being 8.5, 8.6, 8.7. That's weird. 8.5, when my tank hits that number, all my SPS start putting out all these mesenterial fibers. They just come out because they're stressed. And I'm not saying if your corals aren't stressed or not, they could be adapted and used to the higher pH, but that's a really high number. And generally speaking, our recommended pH, the nice balance for a saltwater tank is 8.3. So most people struggle to get it up to 8.3. And to have some people come out saying mine's 8.5, 8.6 or higher, I'm just like, wow. And you said it was calibrated, so I'm not going to call your probe a liar, but it's just very surprising. It seems very high. I don't know what to tell you, but if the corals start reacting badly, then you need to do something about lowering the pH a little bit. Spencer says, I have a 70.5 gallon cube with a little tiny sump, and I want the benefit. I added the word tiny. I want the benefits of a protein skimmer's CO2 off-gassing benefits. Is it possible to use an air stone and PVC tube to achieve a similar result? Not exactly, but you know what? Fluval sells a little tiny skimmer that would probably fit in your sump perfectly and do exactly what you want, and it's like $100. So why don't you look at the Fluval skimmer? They have theirs, it's actually designed to fit in the all-in-one compartment of their 7.5 gallon tank. I don't know if your tank is, you said yours is a cube, theirs is a longer like peninsula tank. But I was just looking at that at Macna because I was like, I think I want that tank and I think I want that tiny skimmer. So you could consider that. And yeah, Justin, if you're doing 30 gallons of water changes a week, that could also be affecting your skimmer not doing very much. It also could be the food you're using. Like if you're using PE mysis, it's very oily and that shuts down a skimmer where it just can't be as efficient as it would be with other foods because of the oil in the water. But 30 gallons a week, it's 120 gallons a month on 180. For a 180, all you have to do is change about 40 gallons a month. That's 25% per month. But you're doing higher, so you're doing the work the skimmer would have done. Good job. Panopolis says, can wastewater from the black tube be used to water my houseplants? What should it not be used for? It should not be used for pets or for human consumption, but it can be used for watering plants. It can be used to do laundry. It can be used to water the foundation around your house. It can be dumped out on your lawn. These are all the places you can use it. Just know you don't want your dog or cat to drink it, and you definitely don't want to drink it yourself. All right. Well, that's it. That was it. I thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We have 125 people here right now. And I really do appreciate that you guys come week after week to check out the live stream and to listen to me and allow me to answer your questions. And I'm happy to provide you with products from milosreef.com. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the weekend. Bye.